Welcome back to XR at Work. My name is Dane. This is Scott. And today we're talking with JB Farge from Subsea7 about how they're implementing XR and the metaverse, if you will. So JB, do you want to do a quick introduction for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, Dan and Scott, first of all, thank you for having me in here. My name is JB Farge. I work for Subsea7. Quickly, the company, what we do is we design, engineer, procure, fabricate, and transport subsea structure and pipeline from the bottom of the sea up to the top of the platform on top of the sea.
So that's super interesting. Very different industries than either Scott or
I. What we do, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested in kind of like, how did you get started in the XR space, and then be interested in kind of like what applications you see as being really valuable right now for you guys?
So it started 4 years ago. There was an interest within the company already to look at software for virtual reality. Now we have to understand that in a company like mine, we have a big pool of drafter and designer. So there is CAD knowledge within the company, and the idea was to leverage this and to the next level to empower maybe the designer and the drafters to introduce design reviews, iterations, maybe in a more efficient way. And so this is where it all started ultimately. After that, after trying to prove the ROI, which was a very interesting exercise based on design review, because there's such, I learned about soft ROI and hard ROI. There is very much a lot of soft ROI that are very hard to quantify and very hard to qualify to senior management for them to open their pockets. So it was a long road trying to understand within the process itself, the engineering process, where throughout the whole process, which gate we were impacting. So that's one of the lessons learned in terms of applying new emerging technologies. There's like understand your process from A to Z and understand where in the process you can make a difference.
So I was going to tell you, like, I think that's a huge thing. And we've talked about this before on the channel too, is like the technology itself delivers the end result, but it's not the reason for the value. Like, you have to understand the process and then insert it in the right locations in order to actually get that value that you're going for. And I think that's what a lot of people start with, is like, oh, this new shiny exciting thing. And then, it's hard to deliver value. And it's because of that, like exactly what you just said, which is, really understanding your process as you're going through and doing it.
And one thing that's interesting is that from a specific mindset. So let's say that you look at design efficiencies, design iteration, right? You can iterate multiple times in VR. You have a more contextual conversation. However, any savings in terms of man hours that you do is not the saving on the bottom lines, because throughout the lifetime of your project, you're going to use those man hours somewhere else. Ultimately, it's not a cost saving. That's why it was very hard at the beginning. Like, it's not a cost saving per se, because I'm not going to reduce my project time by 1 month if I do this. I'm just going to be able to focus on more critical tasks that maybe are going to make me more efficient, or maybe doing right the first time. So it's very hard to quantify, especially to senior management. It's like, you need this, but I cannot tell you how much it's going to save yet,
Right.
Especially, and because I remember one of the first things that I was trying to, so after taking that interest into VR, I went to EWTS, Enterprise Wearable Technological Summit, I think. I've been coming there and now speaking to this event. And I discovered like the best ROI you could get will be with training. Except most of the training of this trained skilled labor was already done by third party. So it was not very applicable for us. So the going towards the design iteration in VR was actually kind of difficult at first. I wish it would be like through training in VR, which is apparently and clearly easier to compare, therefore to make a point that it is better.
Right.
JB, we do virtual and augmented kind of design iterations for some things that we produce in my day job, some physical objects. And you're absolutely right. It's tough to kind of quantify that a lot of times, but sometimes it's just table stakes that we want to be we want to, if you're never really kind of working at the edge of technology, then you never get out there. You're not growing, you're not expanding, and you're not seen as being more technologically advanced, and you're never ready to take the next step if you don't take the first step. So it is tough to quantify that, but it is, there are a lot of soft values that you can kind of pluck out, and you really got to kind of, I have to write them down and remember them, so that way when I'm pressed, I know what to pull out and tout as soft ROI. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so like an example that I see for this is actually an AR where we're looking at using, so there's like applications where that we've built where you can like navigate around, Google Maps style in AR, it kind of leads you to the location. And then when you get there and you can, get access to procedures and other systems that we use for data storage, which is really, obviously that's a super helpful tool if you can just walk up to a motor, point your phone at it, and now you have all the data that you could ever want.
Yeah.
The problem though is it's like how much, like quantifying how many times that it saves somebody a trip to the computer is really hard because we don't think about like our day in terms of, okay, I went here and then I went to my computer and then went back, and then there's a diverse set of people who are using the product as well. So it might be like a maintenance technician, it might be an engineer. Everybody has different profiles for how often they go back and forth. And so there's a challenge there in that it's like, we know this is really valuable, but it's hard to quantify like what the dollar value of me not walking back to my computer is, and then using that time in a different location to do something more valuable, to your point. So yeah, I think that's something that this whole industry struggles with to a degree, because you're right, like you get into training, it's pretty easy to say like this amount of material equals this much money, and you're good to go. But outside of that, it's tough.
And I guess so. It's interesting. I've convinced more people now that we have a 3D theater where it's multi-user collaboration in virtual reality, where people say, "Oh, okay, can you do this? Can you do this?" Like it's an interactive session, right? And so the engineering director, once they've experienced this, like, now I see it. And until they have the aha moment, you have to get to. And that's why it's funny, because I'm very visual. I don't think myself a very good storyteller, but if I have visual to help me, I will be able to tell you a story. Right. Therefore, it serves me well to be in this realm of the industry, because it's all visual. And then what blows my mind, I'm trying to convey that as I'm trying to do the demonstration of that 3D theater, is how I can walk into a 3D scene, physically walk into a 3D scene with other people watching me, and actually go behind a 3D object that's on a 2D wall, right? And so that, and people are like, wow, you can do this? Oh, what about if you crouch? Like if you crouch and you can look at the under this equipment? Yeah, you can. So you crouch and you can show people. It seems it's some people are not expecting. So, oh, this is the future. I'm like, this is here, guys. Like
now,
the future. This is now.
That's amazing. So the digital theater that you were talking about, is that like an actual space that you guys have set up, or is it kind of more of a concept of like a digital place that you guys go to?
No, it's a meeting room that anybody that has the 3D capabilities with tracking capabilities, and we can render in 3D, and so we internally are able to create stuff in 3D, animation and things like this, and also create VR scenes that we can render there. And
just to be clear, is it like you put on a headset when you're in the room? It's not like a cave, or is it a cave? You put just 3D glasses, active glasses. Oh, so it's like one of those caves that you. Wow, that's very cool.
Except it's just a wall. Like we don't have like the sides and the top and the bottom.
Wow, very cool. So I got oh, go ahead.
So I got to believe that your locations, right, are difficult to get to. You're not just hopping around to different locations all over in the middle of the ocean, right? And so you do a lot of stuff remote. You're trying to collaborate with people in different locations, right? Are you finding that it's been easy or difficult to get those aha moments without physically being with people? Because I'm going to a factory in a couple of hours because I need to be sometimes next to somebody for those aha moments to happen,
Yeah.
right? I mean, what's your experience been with? Are you still trying to get face to face with folks as much as you can, or have you accepted and been gotten good at training people or teaching people or having people experience this while you're not in the same location?
Most of the aha moment were in person.
In person, yeah.
Yeah, 90% of them were in person. We have had some, so we do some training also now using web VR, so we can just experience within a web browser. Where so people will ask more question once they see this. Oh, could we do this? Could we do this? So it's a soft aha moment. It's not like, oh, I need this, right? Whereas like now I have like senior management and understand the need of 3D theater or what it can bring to the business. And so, but most of the time it is in person. And again, it's all about the passion. So I feel passionate about this, and I like, and
Sure.
like, it is. So once you talk with people, they want to understand why you're passionate. It's like, why does it make sense for you to be excited about this? And so that's also why sometimes the aha moment is, and you have to let people process everything that you throw at them. Because multiple times I do the demonstration where I show passive 3D, active 3D. I show what else? Well, the scanner that we do, the scanning equipment that we do, and people are like, "Oh, we could use this in so many places." But their wheels are turning. You have to let them like think. Just like, so, what do you think?
Yeah.
And you see when people are engaged, like, and usually this kind of stuff they're engaged because that's their sole point of focus when they are in this room. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of these technologies, it's like, if you think about, gap that you're trying to bridge, like you kind of have to build the bridge a little bit so that people can make the jump, to different things. Cause like, we use tools like Matterport, which is, people use it all the time, like inside their house, if they're going to sell it and things like that. And so when we were first starting that, it was kind of a question of, well, why are we using this real estate tool, in an industrial setting? And so, to your point, like we went and scanned one area and then they're like, oh my God, like, we can tie this into all kinds of stuff. And it's like, yeah, no, it's great. So, to your point, it's not even really like, you just kind of got to frame it differently. I think a lot of times, for people, do you have any tips for like, when you go and talk with people, like any particular things that you hit on when you talk with them about this stuff?
So it's all about, it's funny because I consider my position to be technically an internal salesman. I have to sell technology.
Yep.
So once you understand that, you have to understand the psychological side of sales. You need to, so the person you have in front of you, you have to know their process. So that's up to you to do that homework. Okay, this person is in this department. These are the ramifications. This is typical process they go through. What am I offering that actually is a differentiator for this person? And so you have a wheel, basically, like what are they trying to achieve? Are they trying to achieve cost benefit, efficiency, and things like this? Once you understand this, then it helps you reframe. And again, what I usually do, as you mentioned, Dane, is like you build the bridge, like you give them ideas based on what you know of their processes, and then you ask them, because they have to be part of it. Like your end user has to be part of your journey, right? You ask them, so what do you think, and how could you apply to this process?
JB's out here playing.
The way I approach it, because it's a way to get engagement as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're like planting ideas in their mind and then letting it grow, and then it's because I've had that before too, where like you talk about things and then like a month later, like you get an email and they're like, hey, remember that idea? We should. I've been thinking about that, and
yeah.
So it's not always an immediate thing.
Oh yeah.
I see where people within my company enjoy putting me out in front of someone, right, and saying, here, listen to what this guy has to say, and then I give him the whole deal. And then this executive or my boss or whoever says, and what do you think? How could you use this? And they're just like, they've only heard me talk about XR 30 seconds ago. It
Yeah.
takes some time. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to come out and see you next week, or let's talk again in a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
or let's talk tomorrow. You got to give them some time. Here's all this stuff that's overwhelming. Now, how would you use this instantly? People can't just process it that quick. They're trying to
agree.
get their head around this. So it takes time.
Mhm.
But when the ideas come, man, they come. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's challenging because sometimes I'm like, "Ooh, how am I going to do this?" Like
Yeah.
there was some, and I tell usually, so my counterpart or who I'm dealing with, I will ask them, don't lock down your ideas. Just give them raw, and I'll see what we can do. Like, don't filter yourself by thinking, "Oh, this is not doable." Just
Right.
throw them on a blank wall and let me figure it out and see if this is doable or not.
Right.
That's awesome. So tell me about like the process for you guys as far as like, because like a thing that we struggle with is we don't have, I don't think, as much design experience as like what you guys have. And so we struggle a lot with like interoperability of file types, and things like that. Like, are there any kind of pragmatic tips you can give around, kind of file management and, getting from like a Revit model to an OBJ in like a quick manner, or, something like that?
So that's an interesting. So the one thing that is not perfect at the moment is the centralization of the model. So we have 20,000 people working in Subsea 7. We have center of excellences that develop 3D elements and animations in VR scenes. There's no central repository of specific models. It's still a process where you have to find a model, for instance, of the vessel, that you have to make sure that there was no big modification brought in the last 6 months or so, and that the next center of excellences doesn't have a more recent copy of certain elements on it. So it's that centralization and that library was a big aspect. Now we're going through iteration of Team Center PLM system, where there should be the answer to our problems, where we would centralize most of the assets under one central repository, which will be layered into PLM, and so then we will be able to access those and have a more control access, I guess, if that answers the question.
No, yeah, I'm just glad that I'm not the only one that, that struggles with this, right? And I think, part of the reason I asked that question too is like, this is, if you're new in this space and you're, you wanting to get started, all this stuff, like you have to think about a lot more than just the headset, that you have on your head. You have to think about like, how do we manage our models and keep them updated, and how do we manage our data, and all these different things. So that's the only reason I asked, is because I know that's a tough thing for a lot of us in the industry. And so if you figured it out, I wanted to know the secret.
No, absolutely. Like I don't think there's a particular secret. The thing is, so you have two things. You have the underlying data. So within the pipeline, you have the source data, and then also your scenes as well. What do you do with the scenes? Are you staying on your hard drive? Are they actually online and you can push through and stream through a device? How do you make your content used and reused as much as possible? And you have some platform that now are addressing this. About the source data, though, this is something that is decoupled at the time, from what I'm seeing. And you have to have a third-party solution that deal with this first, and then you can feed into your pipeline of how you create your scene and deploy your scenes, along with hardware management and things like that.
We just talked recently, we did an episode about all about scalability. This is something that Dane and I are both facing day to day, right, in our jobs, as we've gotten some initial wins, we've had some successes, and now we're starting to scale it out, globally and across multiple facilities. What's your experience been with some of the woes or wins what tips do you have with regards to scalability? Because it's a different thing to do it once than it is to do it 100 times faster, right? So what's that
So,
been for you guys, JB?
so it all depends, I'd say, because for me, scalability might be different than for somebody who has more assets, more onshore assets and things like this. So I have to define onshore, offshore. Offshore connectivity is still limited. There are improvements ongoing, but it's still limited. So if I have to rely on an internet connection, my scale is not going to be there first. That's so I have to segment it. Second, on my onshore, where most of the impact would be, it's probably around the design and the collaboration between teams. Okay, this is where this will be the most demanded because it's the closest to a daily task as possible to my end user, and so it could be several fold. It could be giving a platform to multiple. So, and in terms of scalability, I think about how many users can I reach out, or how many users can I empower. I don't think the easy way for me in a company like mine to be to go the headset route.
Okay.
Because IT is not used to do hardware management this way.
That's right.
I've also I've asked to have some kind of a vending machine with a VR with XR headset, right? Either VR or AR, and then people will actually scan. They will book with IT, and then they'll have a code. They get it, and then they give it back, right? But I'm not sure, honestly, that's going to be a natural reflex for people to do that. That's the change management of this also matters. So for right now, the easy way, the less obstacle in my way kind of way, is by those three theater. So scale for me is going to be through that, and scale is going to be through giving web VR tools for people that and integrate it into their day-to-day software, that they could hop into a session and collaborate in a 3D environment with a team from anywhere in the world. That's what scale looks like for me, and it's different answer from everybody.
That's interesting, because what you're saying is kind of it's certainly a different approach than what I'm doing, right? What I'm doing is go put headsets in factories and expect people to rise up to that, where what you're doing is you're providing the technology, the heavier lift technology, in a centralized location, and then letting them consume that or be a part of that where they're at, probably with the device that they're more familiar with, a desktop or a tablet or something like that. Man, you should be charging me for this, man. This is good advice.
No, so it's funny because I was saying yesterday, I heard that, I don't know where, but it's very true. I feel like change management is calculated in dog years.
Dog years, yeah.
That's so true.
And so that's why, like, if you, unless you have a very good communication plan, and you have a team, which is usually not the case, that can walk the floor and be your advocate. That could be Scott copies time 10 or Dane copy time 10, and have the passion and the drive to show those end user. They're gonna go back. I mean, psychologically speaking, you have to change the context. How do you change behavior? You change the context. You don't tell them, do this. Otherwise, the change is not going to be lasting.
That's super interesting. I'm interested in WebXR too. So what are the positives of WebXR? You know, obviously, like, it's easy to share, no application to deal with, like those types of things. And then what are the downfalls of it as far as like requirements for bandwidth, or, you know, whatever you guys are seeing from a downside?
I mean, you have to kind of work with your limitation kind of deal, in a sense of, you're not going to have photorealism streamed from a but does it matter? That's the true question, and ultimately the answer is no. You can get away with some simple texture, like you can do a container on a boat with a rectangular with some nice door, and you can click on it and you have actions, if this then that. That is doable right now, and that's valuable. And one of the pros is that people see this as easy to access tool. They don't have to go ask IT. Yeah, you have to reduce, again, like the less friction for you, the less friction for your end user, the better. So so having it available without having IT to come in, and you facilitate that, of course, like they don't have access naturally, so you just do the work and that's where I think my role is as well, is that I am a facilitator and a positive enabler, obviously, hopefully. And so having this as a very easy tool to access, plus it's fun. I'm not saying it's a toy, but I'm saying it's fun to do. It changes from your day-to-day operation. So there's an element people will want to come back to it and talk about it.
You know, it's funny. So we did a VR fire extinguisher training, and we actually had a thing where people would come in and they would like intentionally fail the training to go back through fire extinguisher training in VR. And I made a joke to one of the guys. I was like, I bet you never thought that people would be skipping out to do fire extinguisher training with us, right? And so I think that's a good distinction that you made there, though, is like, even though it's okay for work to be fun, right? Yeah. Like, even if it's not a toy, it's okay for us to enjoy what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's a really important way to frame it too, is like, you can still be doing something proactive and have fun, doing it.
Absolutely.
Do you guys tell me about like offshore? Is that almost all WebXR where it's like low bandwidth, or are you sending like files that are executable that they download? Like, how does that work?
So right now we're not focusing on offshore as much as onshore.
Okay. Understandably.
So again, first of all, the audience offshore is different than onshore. So you have a change management aspect there to take into consideration. We want to make sure that we have it as part of everyday tool onshore before going offshore.
Right. No, that makes total sense.
So, I mean, bandwidth's got to be an issue for you guys. I know it is for almost all of us, right? I know I struggle with it daily. I mean, JB, you talk about a lot of different roles that you have to play. You're part salesperson, part IT, part designer. Probably also, I mean, I get called in. I know Dana and I talk about this. I end up being, network infrastructure consultant a lot, and it's like, how many hats do I wear? But I think I would say that it's part of being an XR today, right? It's not just about cool glasses and those aha moments. It's all this other stuff. I mean, would you agree? Are you dealing with a lot of different things that you're like, I have no formal training in this, but
that's correct. But I'll figure it out.
I slept at the Holiday Inn Express last night. Yeah.
But that's and that's funny. It all comes down also to who you are personally. It allows me to knock on doors that I haven't knocked before, and come to learn. I mean, it's something. I have ADHD. I love to learn. Like, if there's something new that's going to be out of my comfort zone, like, let's do this. So it's natural. Like, oh, network infrastructure, I have no idea. Let me talk to this guy. I think he knows something. And then you go and you start to discover more processes, which ultimately builds your knowledge on how does this overall XR stack works out. So but it takes someone that has to be curious to go through this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think if there's somebody who's starting XR today, like, this isn't an out of the box solution, like, at all, right? There may be like subsets of capability that you can buy, remote assist on a HoloLens or whatever that you can buy that is valuable. But this ecosystem that we're trying to build around this stuff is not like we're going to spend $50,000 and end up with a full ecosystem, right? Like, it just doesn't work that way.
There's not an XR in the box kit you can just go buy and plug in and it just read the instructions and it works. It didn't work that way yet. Yeah.
No, and that's one of the key also at the beginning. So like most companies used to do before digitalization, before our digitalization effort, teams would do their things on their own without telling IT. That's I used to work, at least in the way we're doing. Now you can't do that. Once you understand that you need IT, like, in order to scale, to understand how the the entire framework works, plus how to scale, IT needs to be on your side. That means that at every step of the stage, I need to understand what is IT requirement, what are IT requirements, and flow that down without having to bother IT every day.
Do you have folks out in the field? I mean, I hope for your sake you don't, but because we face a lot of this, JB, but do you have folks out in other parts of your company that are doing things you didn't know about, XR related, and you find out about it afterwards? Or, oh, you do. So you're not always the central hub for all things XR related for your company.
So that's the thing. I should be, but people have ideas.
Yeah.
And they are excited. And so usually it goes back like, hey, we have this going on. How do we make this? How do we make project use it? So it goes usually back, or they're leveraging 3D elements, which I'm very close to the team that actually leverage 3D elements. I'm like, oh, why are you guys doing this? And then it's a conversation. But there are still some stuff that exists that are technically XR, like maybe 98% is under my remit, and then 2% is like out there.
Yeah, we see that. We see where, some of our locations are doing XR and they get stuck, and then they call me and it's like, I have no idea. What are you doing? I didn't know about this, right? I have no idea. I don't use that vendor. I don't use that platform. I don't use that device. Or it's the opposite, right? It's like, we got to get Teams working on some tablets. It's like, you're not looking for me. Teams is not XR, so
Yes.
so it kind of goes both ways. But I always
Yes.
try to, I think, and I know Dane, and I would imagine JB, you seem like a sweet guy. You're probably the same way. You always try and keep the relationship intact and try to be helpful as best you can, which means you end up being, because you're nice and approachable, and you're smart in the technology sense, right? People want to ask you stuff or bring stuff to you that you're like, all right, this is really not my deal, but I'll help them anyway, right? So the list goes on.
Absolutely. But so if I was to go back to the original intent of helping people to get into XR, there's one thing that I like to share usually is about how. So part of understanding the process of your company is understanding the budget timeline of your company, which is not something that people are very familiar with. If you are actually, let's say you're an engineer and you're doing engineering work, and now you're charged to, you're going to do XR and find vendors. Now, like, negotiate terms. Okay.
Now you're in procurement and contracting besides sales and
right.
design. Yeah.
Right. And so for me, it was key to understand, or to have people understand, when are your budgets sanctioned? When do you need to actually, if you had a pilot ongoing, which means you had to go through a few phases already. If you had a pilot during COVID time, it was like, oh, we can travel. We need AR, right? Or remote assistance, remote inspection. You had to have funds approved, so the people, or at least somebody should know the people that actually approved that. What was the timeline? And how do you plan this for the next year? Because once you have something ongoing and that started, that's the easiest place to actually go to the next year. What do we do next? You guys were happy to do this the first year. What's coming next? I just said, was that a one-time thing, or we are trying to do this often? And that's those. Even though the ambition of somebody in that XR position might be, yes, let's do this more, maybe it's not the stakeholder or the VP position. And so until you have the yes there, I mean, it's important to know this environment before you go further, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, well, and I think, so the thing I would add, so I agree with you. The thing I would add to that too is, like, little wins early make tailwinds, right? Like, so, if you can get the easiest thing for people to either put on or try out in their hands, get them excited about it, and then it's like you get the ball rolling, right? Because like that's the hardest thing to do sometimes, is to just kind of get enough momentum that so like for me, one of our facilities, we have a guy named Robert, and he's awesome. Like, he never did you know, XR in his life before, you know, we started some projects and stuff, but was a prior trainer. So he knows a lot about how people learn and all that stuff. And I can't tell you how valuable he's been, you know, as an advocate for it. And, you know, now he's really integral to our team. So like, you know, I think early and easy wins, even if they're just simple stuff, are super valuable and underrated. Like, I think you don't want to just like jump off the deep end and try and, you know, buy a cave, you know, and install it, you know, kind of thing, or, you know, do something like that.
And also have people understand something that we could be better at is have people, any kind of end user, understand, regardless of where they come from in the discipline or the function, how to get access to it, how to actually get access to it, because you tell them it's available to you. Okay, but like when within the process to actually do the call of actually asking for it, people don't know. And we have to remember, projects are, I'm executing my project, I want to be under schedule, well, under budget, and be off schedule, right? So how, like, they're not in the let me think, oh yeah, I thought this, like, they're not in that mentality. So it has to be very easy. And again, changing the context of, hey, maybe on the web page that they usually go to get their engineering drawings, there is a page, there's a, hey, access to VR, or like during their process, it has to come naturally. That it cannot, and it's back to the friction. It has to be seamless within their process, which is the hardest part to do. I'm figuring out.
I think we're all trying to figure it out as we go along, man. It's an interesting journey. I'm sure
because this is where you go back to that's where the bridge, your XR position is a bridge to then the corporate world, where you have to influence the way the system works. And so this needs to change. So this can get activated. And this is like, okay, so we have to change procedures, guideline, and how people get to the information, so then they can use it. Like, yeah, so for Matterport, you were referring to Matterport, we have 5,000 user enabled. I have 10% that have accessed it. Engagement rate, however, it's already bigger than some of their initiatives that we have. So like it's never, yeah, it's always a give and take. It's a very interesting endeavor. I'll tell you that.
Well, I mean, man, what a great wealth of knowledge you have, JB. We appreciate it, and I know that our audience is benefiting a ton from this. We'll go ahead and put in the notes for this show, this podcast, we'll put some contact information. If that's okay. Maybe a call out for you so folks can ask questions. Thanks for being part of the community, and thanks for joining us on XR at Work today. We really appreciate your insights and your camaraderie.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, JB.